Welcome, 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 everyone, to Two Guys in Hockey Talk. My name is Pawel the Cat with my wonderful co-host, Evan REV.
Evan, oh, you're saying it for me. Thank you so much. Rev Renaerts, guys, you can follow me at Rev and Ev on X and my co-host here at hockey_2. Glad to be with you guys tonight, man. Playoffs across the world right now, everywhere. The KHL is moving into its final in the Gagarin Cup. We're dealing with AJHL finals in Saskatchewan and Ontario finals in AAA, Junior A. Sorry. I mean, it's everywhere. And the NHL is, I mean, they're already almost halfway through, potentially 1/3 at least have through some of their series.
100%. It's been quite fun watching some of the games. I'm sure a lot of people are tuning in to a variety of them. Now, you guys can tune in every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. We are on Facebook, on YouTube. We are on Instagram and on X/the old Twitter. Give us a follow. We are always constantly posting things along with our show every Wednesday on our website, but we also want to hear from you guys. So we love connecting with you. Evan, you are chatting left, right, and center with people online on X. I see it all the time. It's great. You're engaging. You're really showing them the ropes. You really know something about hockey, right?
Well, I don't think a lot of people think I do. I love to have fun. Guys, just so you know, if you're corresponding with me, I love to have fun around stuff. And but I do realize sometimes I need to hit a pause button. Just like, you have to pause when you're speaking. Sometimes you need to pause when you're writing. And I would encourage some of you to do the same.
Well, we got a jam-packed show. We got a lot to get to because there's a lot happening in the world and in the world of hockey. And we will get a little bit later into the postseason and what's been happening. But there's quite a bit happening for the other teams that are in the playoffs because, as you know, Evan, business doesn't stop. Things continue to go. There's a lot of decisions that need to be made for a lot of these 16 teams that aren't going to be making it, along with some of the members, and whether it's the coaching staff, the players, things are being announced. And so the first team I wanted to get into that just barely squeaked by is the Blue Jackets. Now, I've been hearing that head coach Dean Evason, who potentially could be Jack Adams' nominee, potentially. I know they didn't make the playoffs, but it is possible he makes it and gets some votes, will coach Team Canada at the upcoming Men's World Hockey Championship. And it sounds like NHL Flames coach Ryan Huska is also going to be behind the bench. A few other things are being determined, but I know a few prospects that you've been keeping an eye on are going to be attending. Do you want to kind of touch base on those?
Yeah, well, specifically, so you guys know Zane Perrick. He's the prospect that got in a game with the Flames at the end of the season. It's great because he's going to get a chance to play with a couple others at the World Hockey Championships under Dave Evanson and the assistant coach who will be now named Ryan Huska. It's exciting time. Now, just a clarity, some junior players who just came out of junior, they're going over to essentially be on the practice and pre-tournament roster. So the reason is they may end up making their way on and staying, but generally speaking, they're going over to gain experience. Hockey Canada wants to start giving more experience opportunities for these players. So they're paying for them to come over at least early on, and then they likely will be sent back as they become more like NHL rosters for the World Hockey Championships, which begins, I believe, May 8th. I'm always excited about a lot of people don't get excited about it, but I have no choice. It just like, man, I enjoy watching it may not be best on best, but it's at least half best on best, or at least 1/3 best on best.
100%. And speaking of other teams that barely squeaked by, the New York Islanders, they've been making quite a bit of news. Now, a few things that we'll get to in terms of Lou Lamoriello and him not re-signing with the team, which I'll let you comment on that. But it was announced even today, just before we started the show up, is that forward Cal Clutterbuck will be retiring from the game. He posted a video on his Instagram and just talked about after 16 years, it's time to hang up the skates. He's one of the best, players to ever play the game. He had a passion. He was strong. He was physical. He played with the Minnesota Wild. He was a third-round pick, 72nd overall in 2006. He's from Ontario. The guy has had an impressive career, 1,064 NHL games, 143 goals and 150 assists. It's not, he wasn't the sexy star that you would imagine, but he was a grinder. He was your Lou Lamoriello type of guy. But your quick thoughts on Cal Clutterbuck hanging up and lacing up the skates?
It's a big congratulations to the guy. He's basically like that guy who was your third line guy, was always a go-to strong checker. He can annoy the other players. He had good speed. He knew the game. He knew the smarts of the game. I feel like he was able to find, and he could hit. If you guys remember early on, he was incredible. In fact, there were some questionable calls on him in the early days, especially back in, I believe it was the Minnesota Wild days when he played with, I'm pretty sure it was the Wild. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong there. But one of the things that I will say is I like it that he's looking at his career, looking where he is and saying, you know what? This team's not in a spot right now to contend, to even try to put up maybe one more year. And so it's time for me to move on. And you got to appreciate when a guy feels happy enough to say, I'm done. I've served well and I've made my money.
For sure. And so speaking of general managers, it looks like Lou won't renew his contract there. He's been there for a bit. Prior to that, he was in Toronto. He's done quite a bit for the team in terms of getting them to the Final Four a couple of years back versus Tampa. They were one of the more competitive teams. It looked like they had a bright future. They've missed the playoffs in the last few years. Some interesting trades, including the more recent one with Brock Nelson going to Colorado, but they did get a first-round draft pick. They did get Bo Horvat from Vancouver. That was a big trade that I know that Islander fans liked because they wanted a little bit more offense. He brought in Patrick Waugh after everything that happened. What can you say about Lou Lamoriello and his impact not only on the Islanders but the game of hockey?
I just for clarification, if people heard that when you were mentioning, when you hear about renewing the contract, it was decided by the organization not to renew, not by Lou. So you guys are familiar with that because it requires both of them to see if they want to renew the contract options. In this case, they just felt it was time to move on, which interesting. It was weeks ago we talked about this. I called this last year. I couldn't see this going. And when we talked about the possibility, like what happens with some of the issues, and he was starting to have a little bit with Patrick Waugh. Is this now the opportunity for Patrick Waugh to move up? I mean, that would be a huge step for the organization. He has run incredibly good. I actually prefer Patrick Waugh, like Joe Sakic, in the management more than I actually do the coaching. But the question, and he's done excellent with the Quebec Ramparts in the QMJHL. In fact, one of the strongest teams. He's always been up there. I would be in favor. How about you Islander fans? Would you be in favor of that? Of Patrick Waugh? Or do you feel you need to bring someone else in? And we'll talk about that a little bit later because there are other opportunities and other potential GMs that could be out there.
100%. And I think what it is that the Islanders now need to kind of shift their identity. We know what they kind of were, but Lou kind of had a particular vision for his team, whether it was the silly, he ran a tight ship with no beards until playoffs, things like that. We reported about how Anthony Duclair had to cut his hair just because of the look, the approach to the game. And to some extent, for some people that's great. And for others, it seemed a little bit outdated. But you can't deny the impact he's had across the league and what he's done. And I wouldn't be surprised if he got into some kind of leadership role with the NHL. I feel like it'd still be valuable. Now, next?
And it's interesting because there's these rumors that Buffalo could bring him in. And I know I'm trying to remember who it was. One of the insiders was just saying, don't rule out the possibility. Oh, Frank Saravelli. He was saying, don't rule out the possibility he's done. Well, he's 82. It's just like I can't see why a team like Buffalo would bring in someone. I think that's past the time that you do that. You need to make some new changes. But anyway, I like that idea in a capacity with the NHL, and let's honor the man.
Yeah, and let him just have kind of something where he can still impact the game. But I mean, it seems like if he wants a job, there are opportunities for him to be able to get that. So I'm not going to turn
What about player safety? What if Lou took it over? I'd be really
hear why. You would just get a suspension or a fine. You would never even hear why.
You wouldn't even know how many games until they come back.
You would just be like, what? How long is player X out for? Yeah. It's been interesting there. You know, we know about the Duclair situation there with Patrick Waugh and how he hasn't really performed in that contract that he signed. The team needs a little bit more scoring. Their goaltending is good, although, again, both Varlamov and what's his name? Evan, and the other one.
Evan, I haven't heard of Evan.
Varlamov struggled a little bit this year. You know, he's been in and out and injured. And who's their other goalie?
Samsonov? Samson. Is it Samsonov? Is that
Yes.
it or someone else? Yeah. Okay.
I believe so. So, you know, that they've gone through a few changes. It'll be interesting to see what their identity is, because that will definitely shift. And I believe that they're open in exploring what that's going to look like. So it's going to definitely be a coveted job because it's an exciting market. It's a team that's just on the cusp and they have some good pieces, and who knows where, you know, a couple of tweaks here and there. Now, speaking of tweaks, Vancouver, a lot of tweaks. It sounds like there's a lot going on there. Now, more recently, there was their end of year conference, and Jim Rutherford made some interesting comments about Quinn Hughes and about how he has heard that Quinn, of course, would like to play with his brothers, Jack and Luke, who, of course, are in New Jersey right now in the postseason. We'll get to them a little bit. But it sounded like potentially erase some eyebrows, because it sounded like he was tampering with the idea that the brothers, they're going to do what they can to bring the brothers to Vancouver, not the other way around. And for some reason, according to Rick Duwally out of Donnie and Dolly, Duwally, they said that it's not tampering. It's not going to happen. But I got to be honest with you, Evan, it sounded kind of odd. I'm sure someone from the league will call Jim and say, hey, listen, knock it off. Don't say things like that. But imagine if any other players said that, you know, like, or any other GM said that. Oof.
I feel like this is another situation of an elder of the game, because you know how many, like, I was going to go back out and do a little bit of history of people who have been warned about this kind of stuff. Like the Bettman and or Daly would have called them. They would have set them straight, even a soft warning. I'm hearing that nothing. They're not getting a call. They're not getting anything, that it was fine. Well, if that's the case, you know how much is going to happen now? Because you're talking about potentially saying, because you're telling guys that are in New Jersey, hey, if you want out, we're willing to bring you. Well, that's tampering. What else can it be? How can it be anything other than? Okay, anyway.
I guess it depends on who it's coming from. But one of the big things that we still have to know about, and it sounds like we're going to know by the end of the week, is Rick Tocchet's future. Have you heard anything about that? Because I know that the team won't exercise its option for Tocchet, but they've offered a new, more lucrative deal for him to stay in Vancouver. Is that what you're hearing?
Yeah, exactly. So the situation is on the option, what they're saying is we're not willing to go in for a final year the way it sits because of the option. But however, how you guys got to hear this. They want to make sure that there's no questions moving forward with whatever they're doing in this build. So what they're asking, it's more money. No idea how much money this is. I haven't heard those numbers, but they're actually offering more money, and they're actually saying, listen, guys, listen, Tocchet, we have a better deal for you on the table. And I'm actually hearing that it's 3 years from this coming year. So it'd be a 3-year offer. And I'm going to speculate, and I'm going to say that they're offering him somewhere in between the 4 and the 5 million.
That's what I've heard, up to the 5. So it'll be interesting to see. Now, the other question they have to figure out, because of course we know that Quinn Hughes really likes Rick Tocchet, is Elias Pettersson. You have a star here making 11 plus million, Evan, and he struggled to perform. And it sounds like after exit interviews, what had happened is that Pettersson came in this offseason, this past year, and he wasn't prepared as much as the team wanted him, specifically JT Miller. And that is where a lot of that rift came. Now, Apparently, JT Miller tried to fix this rift. It didn't sound like it. They made the trade. It looked like that relationship was beyond repair. What does Elias Pettersson do now? And how does he prepare? Because he doesn't have to stay here in the off season. He can go back to Sweden. He can go be with family, relax, decompress, get himself back to what it is. But do you believe, that they will trade him? Or do you believe that he's getting one more chance to figure it out, given what his contract looks like?
I just posted, so I got a text from Neil, and Neil's asking, will Pettersson in Vancouver be traded? That's a great point. I'm sure the Lost Trucker wants to know that. Lost Trucker, I remember a year ago you're saying you think Pettersson is better than Connor McDavid. Let me explain. Let me explain. I'm sorry, Lost Trucker, that my co-host has just blasted a whole bunch of spew from his mouth with that statement. So this so well, it was his 100+ point season, right? That got everyone all excited in Vancouver. And this is why I always worry about in the contract year, big points and paying out. And we'll talk about another player with the Devils a little bit later on here. But with Pettersson, he came back out of shape, not putting in the work, not doing the effort. These were things that I was not familiar with early on. And apparently a lot of the rift that was happening. So this stuff, when you saw Miller taking off, had to do with protecting himself and just settling his emotions because he's such a competitive player and a guy off the ice. A lot of the issues were around Pettersson's commitment to the game. That was what it was. There was a bit of a back and forth. Hughes was kind of put in the middle. Quinn loves them both, is very good friends with Pettersson, but Quinn works hard too. And I don't know how extreme. What I'm hearing is really bad shape. And if you look at Rutherford's comments recently, some of his comments were when he was talking. I'm just kind of seeing if I could find if I had posted them. No, I don't think I had. But anyway, some of the comments that were actually made were that he can't come back. And this is Rutherford talking, that he can't come back the way he did last year. He needs to put in the work, but we feel very comfortable he'll do the work this offseason. That's not a good sign for a guy going forward. I think they share too much personally, so that if you want to trade a player, but there's no way I can see them sticking with Pettersson. There's going to be a trade at some point now, just based on all this information now. I think that they need to find a way to move on. I think in the perfect world, they like to make a trade for Jack Hughes and to bring him, even if they can't get Luke, for Pettersson. Jack is injured quite often, so he doesn't, and that's been an issue with people in Jersey. Would it work for Pettersson to make a move over there? Anyway, that's purely speculation, though. Please, guys, don't think that actually is some inside information. That is only speculation.
Hey, Key, great to see you. Hope you're doing
well.
Hey,
Key, woo! She just got off a WrestleMania weekend.
Well, I bet you had a blast. But yeah, so there's definitely some work to be done for Rutherford and Alvin there in Vancouver. We're going to report if anything changes, but they need to have just kind of a busy but quiet off season, Evan, because it's been noisy. It's always noisy in Vancouver, but it was way more noisier than necessary. Now, speaking of a team that's in the playoffs, the New Jersey Devils, they're competing. It's been tough with all the injuries that they've been facing. Sheldon keeps trying to get them to play. Markstrom has struggled, but we know Timo Meier, he has a contract. And do you believe that he is filling up to that value of that contract? And what do you think he brings to that team?
I think he brings that strong grit and that big toughness. But one of the things that has actually frustrated me when it actually comes to this, Timo Meier, and I said this at the signing at $8.8 million. 8.8. That's almost $9 million. Don't be confused by the 8.8. Think, it's like low eights. No, it's almost $9 million. $9 million. And I want you guys to catch this. Since coming to Jersey, he's a 0.6 point per game player. 0.6. Okay. He can't get more than 52. He can't stay fully healthy. He had 2 seasons that were better than 52 points. The crazy part about this, guys, is that Timo Meier has another 3 years left on his deal at 8.8. Question: if they want the Hughes brothers, could it be a Pettersson and then some other player like Matheson or something, and then they have to take the big contract of Timo Meier? Interesting.
Yeah, you guys can let us know if you believe that would be what's it called? That would be a deal you would make. I don't think a lot of Devil fans would want to make that trade. I think their team beyond the injury is up and coming. They have a good future. There are a lot of young prospects.
Mm-hmm.
They do have to re-sign Dawson Mercer, I believe it is one of their guys who needs to get paid. But you got a lot of your young guys locked up, and I think you're ready to be competitive for years to come. And speaking of their competition, the Carolina Hurricanes, who are now up 2-0 in that series after taking a lead 3-1 in yesterday's game. And it was a fun game, and you could definitely tell New Jersey came out to play, although just they didn't have an answer for Freddie Anderson, who I believe has had a really good series so far. Again, 2 games into it. But we wanted to kind of talk about the Hurricanes because you wanted to talk about one of their prospects.
Yeah.
The AHL.
Yeah, well, first of all, Bradley Nadeau. So Bradley Nadeau, their draft pick, he is the 5th youngest player in the AHL this year. The fifth youngest. And he has 32 goals, finished him 5th in the league. 32 goals. They have a goal scorer coming up from the It's not easy to score lots of goals in the AHL. Just a heads up for you that think it. It's also the 4th most goals by a teenager in the 85-year history of the league. Guys, you hear that? 4th most by a teenager. Now, in 64 games, he had 58 points, okay? Watch this. He was drafted from the new WHL franchise area, the Penticton area. He played for the Penticton Vs of the BCHL. Now, unfortunately, the Penticton Vs are going to be suspended, the BCHL franchise, again, because of the WHL signing. They won't have 2 teams playing in Penticton, but the Penticton Vs have always been a strong team in the BCHL over the years, and Bradley Nadeau was an excellent pick by them. A lot of people were questioning whether this was a good pick. So far, even though he's only 5'10", he's a strong diminutive forward. So good on the Canes. It looks like they have a winner, Pavel.
Indeed. So good on them. Good on Skylar Brindamore also for scoring his first goal there prior in the last game, I believe it was, before the end of the season. Rob Brindamore's son, former Edmonton prospect, didn't want to sign here, played for the team. Very impressive. Now, speaking of other teams that barely missed, the Rangers. We know there's been a lot of noise around the Rangers, and it sounds like today it was also announced that Chris Drury has signed a multi-year extension with the team to remain as the head of hockey operations and his role as president and general manager. But there's something going on here, Evan, because this is a team that did very well last year and was, President's Trophy winner. And yet they're struggling now with settlement payment for Artemi Panarin for a sexual allegation case. Calvin DeHaan made some comments about his role and his impact of what he was trying to do for. I think some of the trades this year with Trouba being shipped out. I know Kreider's name was out there. What did New York Rangers do? What do fans? What should they expect?
I'd love to know what you fans actually expect, because we just talked about how they're moving through coach after coach after coach. How many coaches does Chris Drury get to go through before he actually takes responsibility for the roster? It's like they've had all their chances. Now, here's the thing. The Madison Square Garden's board of directors never brings in a young, inexperienced coach. So you can expect they're looking for experience. Could this be? Could. And because you got to remember, he needs a coach that can get it done. Could this be? And now, I was just thinking of this as we're talking right now, okay? I didn't plan this. I didn't find anyone saying anything. This is brand new in the last few hours that this news came out about Drury. Could it be Joel Quildenville? Could that be the guy they go after because they could withstand any of the backlash, just like Edmonton did? When they hired Stan, they just kind of went through it, and now people will refer to it, but not the same as when it first happened. Eventually, it gets behind you. Could Joel? And frankly, Joel is a lot less involved because he did make reports and send things up the line, and that was a management HR issue because it was reported, but. So that's a question that I actually wonder strongly. If not, could it be Lindy Ruff? Lindy
Ruff just signed a contract with. Buffalo.
Oh, did he? Did he resign?
No, he's there. He signed last year. This was his first.
Okay, my mistake. I was thinking that he was actually rapping, but it was the management that
just signed a brand new contract last year.
You're right.
That's quite surprising because he has a lot of input there in Buffalo.
Which was a bad deal. That's another reason for their issues, in my opinion. So anyway, if you could think of an experienced coach, and you could put their name in there, but if they're not experienced, they don't have at least 3-4 years. I don't see them actually taking them. They could have taken someone like Chris Knoblauch back in the day. He was their own AHL guy and doing great.
I was surprised that they let him go, but
Well, and they had no choice because they were going with Peter Laviolette, right? He had been there and done that. So they're called it's good. I don't know. To me, you got to change the culture starting from management down, not coaching. And so they felt like they were going to make that change. And Ranger fans, let us know what you think. If you got any inside information, any ideas, you let us know and we'll share about it in the next show.
100%. Now, speaking of coaches, there's been a few let go, including Dal Basma in Seattle. And along with, of course, what's his name in Philadelphia just a little bit earlier, John
Tortorella.
And now in Philly's case, they've gone through quite a few coaches in the last little bit. What do you make of this? Are you hearing anything from Jamie Basco or anything in that fandom?
Yeah, no, it looks like they want David Carl. I'm actually really worried. Jamie doesn't think Tockett's the guy. But if Tocchet isn't going to re-sign with the lucrative deal in Vancouver, could that be where he lands because Briere and the boys want to bring the old boys back? I don't know. I feel he's too much like Torts. One of the things that Couturier talked about in his end of year is just that he feels like a little bit of him and Torts had to do with Torts wanted this fast up-tempo game, and it pulled Couturier. He slows the game down. He has the ability to slow a game down and play a slower game, and that's not his game. And my concern would be Tocchet would not be a whole lot different than Tortorella. So is that really the right choice? I don't know. But all the assistants have been let go, though. So just a heads up, Rocky in the works. So
I was interested in the fact that if Tocchet didn't take that job, what about the job that is open now in Anaheim? With Greg Cronin out after 2 seasons with the Anaheim Ducks, this is a coach that got 21-point boost from season 1 to season 2 when he was there. I mean, they made him competitive. They didn't make the playoffs. Pat Verbeek has come out and said this team needs to make the playoffs next year, be competitive. What do you make of that job? You have an up-and-coming team, a lot of young, good players there. You have some veterans, including Gudas and Trouba now. You have Trevor Zegras if he doesn't get traded. You have Lucas Dostal, who's been excellent. You probably will figure out the Gibson question this summer. But would that be a job that somebody like Tocchet would be interested in?
That's a hard one, but now he's out of the playoffs. He's 7 games less won in the season, 7 or 8 games difference. I haven't really thought about that, but if it was lucrative, they paid him really well. I don't know what Verbeek is like.
Going to do that. They have an internal cap that they've indicated.
Yeah, then Tocchet is not taking less. I think Tocchet wants the lucrative deal. I mean, who wouldn't, right? You or me. Are you gonna lose say 1/3 of your salary to go play somewhere else when an offer is even better out there? And I'm not sure, other than the weather, if he really wants to be in a non-hockey market.
That's fair. That's understandable. Well, will be interesting to see. We'll be reporting here when we can. Now, we want to get to a few more teams in the playoffs here. But before we do, we just want to go over one more team that's out of the playoffs, and that is the Red Wings. The Detroit Red Wings had their exit interviews, of course, and there was some recent criticism from Captain Dylan Larkin on the team that Yzerman had assembled. And it sounds like something's going on with the goaltending situation. Did you want to comment on that, Evan?
Yeah, Alex Lyon, was kind of their second, has been a third most of his career, some occasionally a backup. And they have Talbot and they picked up Mrazek, and they have a year each on their contract. And Sebastian Cossa, they want to get him in some reps this year. This is likely the year they want him to step up and work hard to compete. So Alex Lyon looks like he is not being re-signed. He says he feels like he's 24 years old and he wants to continue the game. So he is going to be open on the markets. So the question is, I think if he has options, he goes for the team that has a solidified backup role. So who would that be? That's going to be the question looking in this year. So if you're kind of looking at the goaltending carousel, then you want to take a look at which teams need a goalie or a backup goalie more specifically. He had just a couple years ago, he was performing phenomenally, and then he kind of dropped off as the season, but the team also dropped off. So
100%. So that's pretty much the news. We'll get to a little bit more.
Hey, let me say, where was it here? I just want to, these are the comments that Larkin made. Let's just be specific to what was said. He goes, we didn't gain any momentum from the trade deadline, and guys were kind of down about it. So it'd be nice to add something and bring a little bit of a spark on the ice and a moral boost as well. Now, people are taking that as a negative. I don't think that was his intention, but it is a kick Yzerman's way. Hey, I signed here. I'm a star player. I need some support around me.
Oh, I agree. I think that there's a shorter leash now on Yzerman in Detroit because there's now going to be a real push to try to make the postseason next year. And the team has just been up and down. I mean, they made the coaching change. They got the bump from Todd McLellan. It looked like they were in the driver's seat at the beginning of the season. They faltered a little bit. And at the end, they couldn't grab the wheel and really control their own destiny. And say what you want about whatever contract. You have to fill it with veterans to bring that experience. Maybe it's not the best. I know they went after Stamkos real hard, is what the reporting indicated. They couldn't get him, so they brought back, of course, Tarasenko. It hasn't been a good fit. Kane's been there for a bit. He's done what he can, given the surgeries and the amount of hockey he's played. But there's definitely going to be some changes there because they want to be competitive and try to make the playoffs. And remember, Evan, it's an 82-game grind season. It's a lot. So it's not an easy thing. And there'll definitely be some they definitely got to figure out their goaltending. So as you indicated, Cossa sounds like he's going to have that opportunity. Now, I want to get into Rant of the Night.
Puckpedia brings you
Rant of the Night.
Calling all hockey fans, stay on top of your game with Puckpedia. It's the ultimate source for NHL salary cap information.
All right, Rant of the Night. So I have a beef to pick with the NHL. Elliot Friedman reported recently that apparently there's a bit more scrutiny happening right now about the LTIR, long-term injury reserve rule. Specifically, they were indicating it was about Mr. Evander Kane, who's coming back. Now, a lot of this is coming back to the fact that some of these players who are on LTIR for whatever reasons, and their information, their medical records are being provided to the NHL and the NHLPA in terms of what's going on, what they need. But a lot of these players will come back to game 82 and then play the first game of the playoffs, or they'll miss game 82, but ready to go and looks like they never missed a step. And all of a sudden now the NHL is saying it's a problem. Where was this a problem when Kucherov was injured? Where was this a problem for the last few years when Vegas decided to have Mark Stone in February of every year, just before the postseason, get injured and then come back? And there was, mum's the word. Didn't Kucherov even have a T-shirt made, $11 million over the cap? Like now, all of a sudden, because a Canadian team is doing it. Now, I know one of the other teams that this is referring to is Tyler Seguin, who was injured for the Dallas Stars, and he came back in game 82. Of course, Dougie Hamilton out in New Jersey. But why all of a sudden this is a problem? This is a stain on the NHL again, because you have the greatest sports in the world and you continue to make these bush league moves. Oh, Vegas can do it. Tampa can do it. Great. Oh, the moment Edmonton or Dallas does it, ooh, we gotta crack down on this. You can't be doing this. What's really going on here? Now, we heard rumblings about what was happening with Evander Kane in terms of why he needed surgery again mid-season when he had it at the beginning of last season. Things happen, Evan, right? You can't control the body. Sometimes things go wrong. They don't naturally recover properly. So you got to go get a second opinion. You saw what they did with Matthews and Jack Eichel when they needed surgery. And even Matthews going to Germany this year, including Matthew Tkachuk. But no one's complaining about Matthew Tkachuk coming back yesterday for the first game ever and having an extra 4 days of rest while all the other series are ongoing. So to me, this is silly. You're going to fix this. Change it in the CBA when the negotiations start up, but don't pull this, well, what are you guys doing at Edmonton and Dallas when other teams have done it for quite a while? It's BS. Get out of here with this shenanigans. I don't believe it. Cap out. I'm 11 minutes over my own time. Cap.
Puckpedia brings you
Rant of the Night.
calling all hockey fans. Stay on top of your game with Puckpedia. It's the ultimate source for NHL salary cap information.
I think, it's interesting because Gabriel Landeskog, we just let Key know from Philadelphia, just kind of mentioned to her that Gabriel Landeskog is starting game 3. So interesting because they're kind of in the same boat. Can I just remind everybody on this show, 2 years ago, the first year, okay, that Stone was coming back later and Kucherov had already done it. We said if this was the Oilers, they would be screaming about it. Last year, we said the same thing. If this was the Oilers, you just wait. 1 year it'll happen. But right now they're fine with it. This year, we brought on Hart Levine, one of our partners with Puckpedia. And we had this discussion. You can go back. And we said, I'm sure the league's going to look into it soon as Edmonton, because it looks like he's probably not coming back, and most likely, and if that happens, they're going to be screaming bloody Mary per se. And now they're not screaming; they're talking quietly, but everybody knows. And sure enough. So,
yeah, it's definitely an interesting thing. Don't get me wrong; I understand injuries happen.
Essentially, though, what you're saying is when it's not those Southern teams that were wanting to build up the rapport of all the fan bases, and God bless you guys. I mean, Vegas, you guys got a great fan base. You guys got a great city, everything around it. But again, Bettman wants to protect that for the likelihood of the game. But I blame this on all the board of governors, all the owners who didn't step up and actually deal with this earlier. And last year they started talking. And now, soon as there was 2 other teams, and I feel Edmonton is fully legit because they literally gave away a draft pick to free up cap space, didn't play and didn't even play Trent Frederick because he was injured, paid for a guy to play like 8 minutes. They traded and I mean barely played the other night, and who knows what happens from this point on because of the injury issue. This was kind of known. So like this is not even close to what was previously. So who else is out there that this is a rant for you?
You look at even the cap that Evander Kane has, 4.35. Now he should draw back in tonight. It'll be interesting to see, but you guys can let us know if we're off our rocker or if we're right. Now, speaking of the Edmonton Oilers, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about Stuart Skinner and his role because there's been a lot of talk about goaltending, and I had a comment I want to finish after you, but I'll let you kind of take it away from there.
Yeah. So, and again, my apologies to any Oilers fans. If you see me on X, I realize that I need to pull back a bit. I'm more frustrated at management, not Stu Skinner. I think that they decided to put all their marbles in. They got a good friendship going on. When people ask me who are the untouchables in Edmonton, it's McDavid, it's Draisaitl, it's Nurse, and it's Stu Skinner. Those are the others. There might be some we prefer not, but if you gave us the right price. Those four, though, it's like they're best friends. And so no matter what they do, their friends are going to stick by them thick and thin. And they've chosen to keep, and I've always said this. I know Pawel doesn't agree with this, but I always say most teams, you will notice, take a section of their money in their salary cap and they put it aside for it's 8 million, 10 million, and they put that money aside for their goaltending. The Oilers have not done that. They've gone an opposite route, tried to cheap out on their goaltending, brought in a guy who should have been a backup last year, maybe started taking the reins this year, but because of their failure with Campbell, he was put in, and he got to Game 7. And I said, I know he got to Game 7, everybody, but Game 7, he had 2 games the entire playoffs where I would say he played like a star goaltender in the playoffs. The other games... Yeah, and exactly. One in the Florida series and one in the Dallas series is the way I looked at it. I don't fault him on that last game. In fact, that's the game that I actually give him against Florida, the game that they lost 2-1. If you can't win a game because you can't even tie it, that's on you. Every other team has it. I'm tired of local media in the Edmonton region backing up. They will rip Bouchard apart, but they never say anything. And so I kind of felt like as a fan and as someone that actually does in the blogging and the podcast world to take advantage of my platform and to share some stuff, especially with my background in goaltending. I have spoken to an NHL goalie coach. Okay. I'm not going to say who they are because I've kept that promise on the side. And so they specifically, we talked about Campbell back in the day. We talked about Stewart. This is back then. Okay. In that same season. And then we also talked about Bobrovsky and we talked about Spencer Knight. And during that time when we were breaking down those 4 players, the things came out about his game. I'm not going to get into it. Go into my X. You can see some of my different statements. Let me just give you a stat that I will put on X later tonight. Here we go. 36 games in the playoffs. Okay. That is a good sample size. Would you not say?
100%.
Okay. He has 0.891. That means he saves 89% in 36 games. That's bad, by the way, for a playoff. He is a 2.93 average. That means he lets in almost 3 goals a game in the playoffs. This is who he is. He's not going to change a whole lot. You have what you have until you have a season that knocks us out of the... He could not even make 900 this year. He had too many games that were that bad. I know they went on a streak, and Jason Greger and the mainstream media and some others, they just said, hey, listen, over the last 7 games, even Bob Stauffer, hey, I appreciate your stats, but you're cherry picking around a specific time. So if you're going to pick those stats, let's add these stats of those other 7 games, put them together. I remember the late Bruce McCurdy, when he was on our show, he talked about how he breaks them down in 10-game segments. So here's the thing. You don't take one 10-game segment. You look at it and say, okay. And then you look at the next. And then you look at the next. How often? He's usually inconsistent. And that's the reason that I couldn't pick them for the Stanley Cup this year, buddy.
No, that's fair. The one caveat I will have for Skinner, at least in the first round, is that he is not the only leaky goalie in the first few games. You look at Vasilevsky, he let in 6 when they played yesterday versus Florida. When you look at the guy on the other side, Darcy Kemper, who's going to be a Vezina nominee, he let in a few. When you look at, and his numbers are a little bit better, he's a Vezina winner, of course, Connor Hellebuck. He had a shaky start to game 1 in the first 2 periods. They ended up winning that game, Winnipeg, but those first 3 goals, they did not look good. Here's the difference.
Yeah.
Those guys bounce back, and they have something to their credentials. And Hellebuck doesn't have a cup like Vasilevsky and Kemper, but Hellebuck's going to have 3 Vezinas here. He's got 2 at least right now. He leads the league and wins. Stuart Skinner needs to prove to that level that he can do that. And I don't know if playing the amount of games that he does is beneficial to him. I think it's been a detriment. He's a big goalie for sure, but I think he needs to work on a few little things, and he can be a pretty successful 1A, 1B partner goalie. The problem is, who is going to be that other guy for Edmonton? And if you're wasting another year believing that this is your tandem with Pickard, and you could be great pals with Pickard, as we've heard before, you've reported on it before here, Evan, it doesn't matter. The whole point is to win. McDavid and Draisaitl want to win, and you need better goaltending. And when they have 900 goaltending, so not your 8-9 in the playoffs, 900 in the regular season, this team is unstoppable.
Yeah.
The problem is they're not getting that. And you look at someone in like Stolarz, and we'll get into that his little battle with Toronto and Ottawa and Ridley Gregg. But you look at that. How do you get that, right?
Yeah.
Like Joseph will say what you want. Great goalie, young guy, gets injured a lot.
Yeah.
But of course, Stolarz has come in as a backup last year for Bobrovsky and made an impact. And I think that's what you want. And it's not like, and I will say Toronto's defense is much underrated. I don't think people give it enough credit. But it's similar to Toronto or to Edmonton, where it's like free the puck up and get the big boys loose, right? But go ahead.
No, and you brought up a great point when we're talking the save percentage. A team cannot win. You're going to get 30 shots on average against you a game, and you can't let it in 3 goals every Stanley Cup playoff game and still win. Last year, they outscored everyone. That's how they won. They made it happen because of their 2 superstars. Now,
having a year,
but
having a record year, right? Like,
so, and that's why all they need is a .905 save percentage from the Edmonton Oilers, and they will win the Stanley Cup. That I believe strongly in that. However, right now, I think tonight is a make it or break it game for the Edmonton Oilers, because if they lose tonight, I can't see them with their goaltending situation, not because of their team, but because of the goaltending situation and their lack of Ekholm out, because they only have a top 3, and someone like Klingberg is coming in your top 4 to be able to play to help, and that's not a good sign. So that would be my concern that I'd be actually kind of working through.
Can I just make one critique of Edmonton? I don't know what it is they have against Jeff Skinner. He finally plays his first playoff games, has a few hits. He tries to be impactful, and you continue to scratch this guy. I have so many other players on that team that haven't played as well, and yet for some reason they do not believe in this guy. Why sign a guy? You're just going to healthy scratch him nonstop. I don't like that play by Knobloch. It's a head scratcher to me. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree with you here. So hey, let me just make. I know we need to get to some news around the rink because we're going to be running out of time soon. I'm just kind of looking here. I just wanted to make mention of Chicago. A couple of things. So Sasha Boisvert, if you guys know, he was drafted by the Chicago Blackhawks. He will not be joining them. He is now transferred to the Boston University for 1 more season at least. So it could be 2 if he decides to stay, but he's going to even a better school. So he's moving over to because you're allowed to do 1 transfer in the special NCAA rules. And so he is making a transfer. So don't expect Boisvert for at least 1 more season. So you got at least and which is a good timing to bring him in when you got Bedard, say 3 years in to his maturity and a couple others. I do expect, you know what? I do want to touch on a couple other things, so I'm not going to hit in anything else around a couple other players. But the last thing I just kind of wanted to mention is Roman Kanserov. He's had a monster season it's 2 years past his draft in the KHL, who is also a player for the Chicago Blackhawks. So if you're a Blackhawks fan, you do have some exciting news coming in the future here. Plus you got the upcoming draft.
Awesome. And with that, we go to Around the Rink.
If you're a fan of hard-hitting, exciting hockey, catch the Kalkaska Battlers.
Around the Rink
Is brought to you by the Kalkaska Battlers. Let them be your local hockey heroes.
So around the rink, we have quite a bit of news happening around the world of hockey. So not just the NHL, there's a lot going on. Now, one of the big news, and it's heavy news to talk about, and it's no easy way to bring this up, but the 2018 Team Canada allegations that were brought forth, the court date has now started. They met in court. Some of the reporting by Rick Westhead has been done very well. You can go follow him on Twitter /X, what was said. It's not for the faint of heart. Be mindful when you're going into reading the report of what actually happened in that room and what exactly the victim is alleging. And again, lots is happening. I know court was adjourned today with some new information that the judge was privy to. And so some changes or decisions may be made for that. Maybe it's a plea. Who knows? We'll be here to report it. It's never easy. We want to get this out of hockey. I appreciate Rick Westhead reporting all this stuff. We need more fun hockey-based stories and not this kind of stuff. I don't know if you want to comment on this.
Yeah. There was one thing that was brought to attention, and I'm just mentioning it. I'm not telling you guys that I'm taking a side, but part of the thing that they have run into now, and it's got, of course, the social media world all worked up, but there are some people locally, I just heard as news came out today, that are with Hockey Canada and that are in the junior world, that are a little shocked because the concern is that the settlement had been made. They already brought the case back, and the settlement, because she was blacked out drunk, and this all happened. But now Discovery is showing that there was specifics, and she knows all the specifics. So now people are confused. How could you know the specifics if you were blackout drunk? And now, however, let's remember that might be that she doesn't actually remember, and we're mishearing the things that are being said. However, by what we're reading from they're bringing all the text together and forming kind of as much of a story as they can. And from that, it's not looking good. I will say that. Not looking good at all. I mean, it never was good. I get that. But please leave your vitriol. Try not to be taking anything out. Let's stay quiet. Let's let the case play out. And at that point, then start sharing our opinions on stuff. Because right now, yeah, you're right. People's lives are messed up. But I think some of you need to keep in your own lane and stay out of this lane because it's not fair to the people. And can I just say this? For those that you saw, there was an actual X feed that went out. Someone that is a representative for Fanatics for hockey jerseys and has gone around, an ambassador for them, was at the New Jersey Devils game with a name on of the New Jersey Devils player that is actually in this sexual assault case. And they had it on, and they were cheering on the Jersey Devils and making some remarks. It's just like, so not sure where that's going to go. Really classless. I'm surprised that there wasn't a fight that broke out with something like that. Just not because he wore the jersey, but because, and remember, especially on the eve, remember, it's the day of, because it had already started a day earlier. So, man, just like you said, bad news, not good stuff to talk about in the hockey world, but very important that we do. And let me say this. Quit saying hockey culture is full of this stuff and it's the worst culture ever. It's in NBA, it's in NFL, it's in Major League Baseball, it's in boxing, it's all over the world, it's all throughout the movie sector, it's everywhere. This is just a part of society. And in fact, you know what's even worse? Go get the stats on those that are in Congress in the US. Guys, you'll find out this stuff happens everywhere all the time. So don't blame hockey, but do tell hockey to smarten up with how they handle and manage things. So,
yeah, and that's all we can say on that. Now, speaking of other interesting news, you talked about it last week, and you have invited Dominik Hasek to come on the show. But it sounds like former Russian president and prime minister has threatened Dominik Hasek for some of his comments he's made against the Russian occupation of Ukraine. We're not a political podcast, but it sounds like there's been some interesting comments made to the point where it sounded very threatening against Dominik Hasek, to the point where the Czech government has stepped in and say that's not appropriate. That's also bad. Like, why would you say that? Like that he essentially has been threatened to be killed. You guys can go read the comments online. Again, we're not here to pick a side. It's just there's two sides to every story. But in this situation, you shouldn't be picking a fight. The former Russian president shouldn't be picking a fight with Dominik Hasek because it's very questionable.
And I don't think Russia gets that. They let one man all of a sudden take front stage, and now people that didn't know what he said are now knowing what he said. And so I think he got his message across. He's willing to take the chance. Good on him, but
they said they provide him protection if need be, but it's just not very good. So again, it's something that we're monitoring. Dominic, if you're listening, we'd love to have you on the show, but that's all much we can say there. No easy way to transition from that to this, but in positive news, the PWHL has announced its expansion. They are going to Vancouver and Seattle, and this was by accident that they leaked it, because there was a link on their website to some of the memorabilia / jerseys and collectibles and things like that on their website. So it sounds like they've made the announcement officially for Vancouver. I think Seattle still, they haven't made that announcement to my understanding, but it's great. When they did their tour across Canada to kind of promote the game, where they had the Toronto's Spectres and the Montreal what is it, Royals?
Wasn't it Victor something? Victor Ayers?
Victor Ayers, yes, right?
Victor Ayers, yeah.
Sold out 19,000 crowd. Great for the PWHL, grows the game, shows that there's more people invested, more jobs, more opportunities. And it's a demographic that it may not be for your typical NHL fan, but it is for other hockey fans. So we applaud them. We'd love to partner with you in the PWHL in any capacity. Feel free to reach out to us and let us know. And yeah, we'd love to do that. And then the final things is you wanted to discuss a little bit about the former head coach of the Blackhawks, Sorensen. He's been at Team Sweden. Go ahead.
Yeah. So he's been added to now again. Remember, they're looking for a new coach now. For the Blackhawks, but right away he got a job with Team Sweden for all the work he's done in the NHL, and so he will be in the World Hockey Championship. So this is a great opportunity. It's well deserved. Great coach, still great coach. I mean, he's dealing with a rebuild there too, right? You always get billed when you're with a rebuild as a trouble coach or not very good if your team doesn't win. It's like only if you win. Doesn't matter how well you develop players. But he is very good at what he does. And the last news I do want to bring up is the KHL. So I was mentioning earlier on, we are in the semi-finals. So you have Lokomotiv facing Salava in the one semi for the Gagarin Cup, and you have Tractor versus Dynamo for those that do follow any KHL. Now, one of the things so Tractor, I was looking, by the way, a goalie. You want a goalie? Does anyone need a goalie out there? Does your team need a goalie? Here's a goalie that was drafted by the Montreal Canadiens, and he is now available as a free agent. His name is Zach Fucale, and he has got his game together last year and this year. He is the best goalie in the KHL, and he is playing for Tractor, and they have a good chance to get to that final if they can get through this series here. And then they also have Ostap Safin, so some of you guys might remember him. Lokomotiv has Martin Gernat for some of you NHL fans, Oilers and Leafs, and Simishev, who was drafted by the Utah Hockey Club, which is now, I guess, is the Utah Mammoth, right? I'm just trying to remember what they went with.
Oh, they haven't announced the name. It should be, but they haven't announced it.
Oh, they haven't announced it yet.
They haven't announced it yet. I think
okay.
I like the Outlaws. I
yeah.
think it grew on me, but okay.
And as well as Lokomotiv also has Maxim Berezovskin, who is an Oilers draft pick too, and Alexander Radulov. So the chances are it could be Lokomotiv and Tractor in the final, most likely. And my feeling is Lokomotiv takes it this year in the KHL. But if you have opinions or thoughts, send them over to us. We love to hear from you.
Great to hear. That's been around.
If you're a fan of hard-hitting, exciting hockey, catch the Kalkaska Battlers.
Around the Rink
is brought to you by the Kalkaska Battlers. Let them be your local hockey heroes.
All right, and we're just getting to the final nitty-gritty of our time. Yeah. Did you want to go through your reps top 15?
I think we're gonna hold off. That's not gonna be a problem. We got lots of going on. Why don't we hit on two series? Why don't we pick on the situation with the Ottawa-Toronto game, and you got one more that you want to talk about?
Sure, Washington and Montreal.
Okay, you go first.
Golden Knights and what's it called? Minnesota. So Minnesota ties it up last night quickly. And we know that Vegas has been known as the least penalized team this season. They even promoted it on their X. However, if you watch that game, they do not look like they're the least penalized team, or they're given a lot of benefit of the doubt because Nick Hague sucker punched Kirill Kaprizov in the face where our Alliance was present.
Wow.
Nothing was called. Ryan Hartman went down, and he also got cross-checked in game one by Nick Hague, same player, in the face like that. Nothing. Now, rumblings are that something happened beforehand and refs kind of let things go. But I got to tell you, Evan, when I'm watching, and we'll get into the Toronto-Ottawa game, when they're calling everything like they did in that game in game one, you can't have a set different standard in a different game. If it's a penalty, it's a penalty. I don't care if it you could say 50-50. Those were two calls that were blatant, and you can't injure a star player. And we know Kirill Kaprizov was injured this year.
Exactly.
Two injuries, some accidental, but collisions. And so the way I look at it is that the refs better get on this because something's going to get out of hand. A player's going to get injured, and there's going to be problems. And so that's where I think it is. However, good for Minnesota for tying it up. Great effort. Philip Gustafson playing unreal. Matthew Boldy, great for him. And I just want to shout out Zeev Boyum.
Zeev Buum. Yeah.
Buum for an excellent start. You could tell he was a little shaky and nervous at the beginning. He took a lap at the beginning. But again, it's a big moment, big stage. Props to his parents for being in the stand. Great effort. I liked him on the power play on the top line. Very impressive. Bold of John Hines. Quick thoughts on the series.
So interesting, Z Buum, just so for those that don't know, he's American born, but he is officially an Israeli citizen. So the first Israeli citizen NHL player in history. So great news. And he had an incredible NCAA. Go look him up. You can find him on Elite Prospects if you need to build some stuff. So
he was a steal. I'm surprised he dropped his first.
Well, and we had said, why didn't, like, for example, I believe when Jet Luchenko was picked by the Flyers, so he's gone now, but I mean that, or even Jamie I know they were happy on moving. I wonder if they're so happy now. I think he would have fit perfect on the Philadelphia Flyers. They got a good one in Luchenko. I think he's got a great NHL game, but I think Buum's game was ready to go right away. And having said that, right now there is a lot of talk that they believe next year full-time that Jet Luchenko likely will play, as well as they will be looking at Denver Barkley, who's playing right now with the London Knights. We'll talk about him more next week. Could very well start the season with the Philadelphia Flyers.
All right. And quick thoughts on the Battle of Ontario.
Okay, so I don't know if you guys watch this game. Stolars. Okay, so the guy playing great season. He is hitting Greg left and right. Now, they both get one penalty. So interference to Stolars. So Stolars gets a penalty for interference. I saw no interference because the interference was when Greg went behind him. That's his own net. He shouldn't get an interference. He should have got a slashing or a cross-checking. In fact, I counted 5 possibilities, 3 blatant. Now, people talk about right now Jack Michaels and calling games for the Oilers versus Kings, and he's not very good, and he's such an Oiler homer because he calls those games. I don't think you watched the prime last game of the year. That was definitely all Kings on an Oilers broadcast. That was a Canadian broadcast for prime. It goes both ways. You're biased to it because you think you don't like them or you don't like the team. And let me prove it. Because all the time we have Chris Cuthbert and Craig Simpson who are Maple Leaf lovers. And that's great for you Maple Leaf fans. And you love the calling of those games. But when you're not, people complain about them. But get this. That game, they didn't call out Stolars for this. They thought, well, it's questionable. And there was some stuff before and all this stuff going on.
That from him.
That was the other thing. Go listen to the ESPN broadcast. They're not biased. And you know what they go? Oh, there's one. there's 2 he could have got. Well, there's 3. And they're like, well, I guess he could have got 4. And then, of course, he got 1. And it had nothing to do with anything he actually did on a blatant call. So can please do this for us, just as fans of the game ourselves. When Pawel or I, maybe someone's talking about their favorite team and you go, oh, you're just biased because it's your favorite team. We didn't say nothing so far about the reffing for the Oilers. We're just talking about reffing for 2 different games that we just randomly picked. Every playoff series right now is ridiculous. The officiating is the worst I have seen it in the history of the game. I have never saw playoff officiating this bad. I've called or 2, but every game, it's tons of players. So
I understand that it's heightened. There's a different expectations. The whistles go away, quote unquote, during the postseason. I just think like there's some calls that like you got to call. It doesn't matter. They did call the Ridley Gregg hit on Tavares. They called it a major so they can review it. Turned it down to 2. Whether you agree or not, it doesn't matter. It still happened. He got the penalty. Ottawa was in trouble for taking too many penalties. They play a little bit more disciplined in game 2. They need to win game 3 and really stick it to Toronto if they want to stay in this series. Otherwise, it's going to be a potential sweep, which I didn't think it would be possible in this first round. But I mean, we'll see what happens tomorrow night. But I really think that, it was interesting to see some of those calls because, again, I would say I understand like him getting out of his crease, and I understand Greg fell on his leg in game 1, potentially trying to injure him because he's had injury in this past season there for Stolars.
Yeah,
I just think like you got to call, especially when you get gambling involved, because players or fans are betting on this, and you're promoting it every 5 minutes.
Yes.
So
yeah,
if you know that this is the goaltender for Toronto versus this, or if this player's out and this is going to make an impact, you got to make it happen, right? So Ottawa's going to play a little bit more disciplined for sure, but the refs need to be mindful. Now, I know Travis Green made some comments about it, and for sure it's an inexperienced team learning how to play in the playoffs for the first time. Yeah. But I really feel like, again, you look at the regular season, Ottawa owned Toronto. It does not matter. The playoffs are a different beast. So
totally,
you guys can let us know what series you're following, what call you believe should be made. But this is it for us tonight. We are here every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. We love connecting with you guys. We are on Facebook, on YouTube. Go give us a follow on X at Rev and Ev, or myself at hockey_2, and on Instagram. We have a website. Always go check out articles that we got there. And we appreciate all of our sponsors and partners that work with us. We wouldn't do this without you. And then, of course, you guys make this the best thing ever. So thank you again. Any final thoughts, Evan, before we tune in? And we've got a big, giant amount of people tuning in. Thank you so much. 60 plus.
And thank you. We have a large contingent that regularly comes in on X, guys. Thank you for joining us on the platform. Be sure to follow either at hockey_2 or me at Rev and Ev. Send us questions. Send us ideas that you want us to talk about on the show. And I know you're watching right now. Send them to us in our DM. Send them to us just on a regular tweet, anything, or as a post, as they now call it. I do want to make mention, Michael Misa has now declined the U18 championships. He was still eligible. He will not be there, and I'm mentioning that because they're getting started. However, I don't think he's going to accept an invitation if he was invited to the Hockey Canada just because of his draft eligibility. Celebrini's going. Interesting enough, could Bedard go, and could Sidney Crosby? Because all 3 of those first-round draft picks could potentially be available for Hockey Canada. And I haven't even got started on the other Canadians available. This could be a good World Hockey Championships.
And with that, we are shutting down. So always, as always, we say, Evan, in the meantime and in between time,
keep your stick on the ice.
Stay safe. Enjoy,
Cheers.
guys. Have a great playoffs.